Right, loads of matches over the weekend in the hurling league. Joined by Michael Verney as ever to talk about them. You were down at Clare, to see Clare beat Dublin and beat them fairly well. Was it that Dublin were so bad? Were Clare particularly good?
Dublin were particularly bad, but Clare were particularly good in fairness. Dublin went 3 points to one ahead. Clare got the next 8 points, went 9-3 up. A little kind of a 10-minute salvo before the break had Dublin back in the game, had them back level at half time. And then it was a similar kind of a pattern in the second half again. Clare just ran away with it in the second half. 27 points, obviously, a big score. Looked very dangerous, particularly in attack and going forward. The way they were attacking was, yeah, it was very, very pleasing on the eye. Shane O'Donnell with a couple of outrageous touches for this time of the year. And it kind of just got me thinking, like, when he gets the ball, I'm not sure if there's any forward or any player in the game that's fouled more than him when he gets the ball or when he's in around the ball. I think defenders are so afraid of him when they get the ball because they know that when he gets the ball, he's going to take them on. We're probably not going to be able to live with him. And he's invariably just fouled. And he's marking Paddy Smith yesterday, who I have great time for. I think he's one of the best defenders in the country, to be honest with you. And but he just tormented him all day long, and even he's gotten so used to the 30-70 ball or the 20-80 ball going into him that he's better at those kind of balls in than he should be.
I wonder, is Colin Fennelly fouled more than him? TJ Reid comes to mind as well.
Colin Fennelly, maybe, yeah, maybe. I'd like to go back through the stats over the last maybe 3 or 4 years.
It's the players that run at you, isn't it? And I think for a lot of Kilkenny players, they're kind of, plan A, B, and C is to run at you.
Yeah, I think Colin Fennelly would be fouled when he gets the ball and starts running. Shane O'Donnell a lot of the time is fouled before he even gets to start running because lads are like, oh no, if he gets 4 steps, I mightn't even get the chance to foul him.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think who else. There's got to be a good few out there. I'd say Alan Cadigan has his fair share of frees won. Cork
again, it's lads that defenders think they're going to get burned by. There's nothing worse for a defender to have a forward running away from you like that and maybe burn you. Whereas if you foul him, listen, it's not great, but at least from a selfish point of view, it doesn't look as bad on you.
Because Dublin, okay, going back to that game, Dublin had done all right in the sense that they went well behind and then came back level. Trollier scored a goal, Eamon Dillon. Did they just peter out? What's the problem? Like, they're missing an awful lot of players, so the power of the panel just is not there. And when I say missing players, there's a fair chance that an awful lot of them aren't coming back. Just to recap, Sean Tracy isn't going back, Darragh O'Connell isn't going back. Conal Keaney remains to be seen. Liam Rush, did Liam Rush appear or tug out even?
Liam Rush appeared for maybe the last 10 minutes yesterday, yeah.
How did he look, just physically now?
Yeah, not too bad. The first ball that came down on him, he won in the half-hour line, and I'd say it was one of the only kind of clean catches or anything, apart from maybe a Donald Burke catch or two here or there, that they were able to win. They were literally, they could not get their hands on the ball. Was it a wind issue in the second half? Did that contribute to it? Or were they just, like, when I looked at their forward line this week and I looked at their forward line last week against Wexford, I was just thinking, that's not really an inter-county forward line. Yeah, I don't think the wind didn't really have anything to do with it, to be honest with you. They just, as I said, they just couldn't get their hands on the ball. Any sort of a ruck ball or any sort of a high ball like that, Clare were invariably the ones that came away with it. One kind of feature of the Clare play under Lohan seems to be kind of a physicality, and a physicality isn't like lads run into each other with shoulders. It's just being really, really aggressive on breaking ball. Like they were invariably the ones that came away with breaking ball. They were just being really, really aggressive, and they were getting their flicks in. Dublin never had, you never had a second for a pick up or anything like that. They were just kind of swarming all around them. The likes of David Reedy, Ian McInerney, all those guys around breaks out around the middle. And yeah, Dublin just couldn't get hands on the ball. They had 3 men. It was very interesting. I thought very strange, I have to say. They had 3 men planted in the full forward line for nearly the whole of the second half, despite the fact that if the ball went in between those 3 lads twice in the second half, I'd be amazed.
So from that point of view, you feel like Matty Kenny didn't adapt to the situation midway through the game, that things were going poorly, the ball was going up the field, and they were basically playing a game with 12 players because the other lads were just isolated away from the play?
Yeah, I thought it would. It's very rare that you see three men in a full forward line in general at all now. I was surprised that there wasn't a fourth man out around the half forward line, or even a third midfielder or something to give them a little more impetus on the breaking ball, because they just couldn't get near that kind of breaking ball. Clare were the ones that mopped up everything around the middle.
So that means that Clare have gone through the group stages unbeaten. But Brian Lohan is a bit like maybe Liam Cahill. Shane O'Neill, definitely not, I wouldn't say to the same extent, but he's more or less playing his championship team, or certainly trying to sort of tweak to get to his championship team. He's not like other managers who are pretty much experimenting and just trying to find new players to add to what they already had.
Yeah, it was interesting. He said something like that after I kind of asked him, "Are you happy enough with the shape of the team, the way things are now after 5 games?" And he kind of said, "Yeah, listen, we'd love to get more lads in. They've got a decent few new faces in. We'd love to get more lads in, but at the end of the day, you need to get results. So it's kind of finding a happy balance between getting a couple of lads in and getting them game time, but actually finding out what your structure is and making sure that you win games. Like, they're in a much better position now, having won games. If they'd experimented more, maybe they wouldn't have won as many games. Maybe they'd be only been in a quarter final, or maybe they wouldn't have qualified at all. But definitely, they're noticeably more direct. I know you were at the Kilkenny game the week before, where it was maybe some aimless kind of direct ball, and maybe it was too long at times. But there was definitely an awful lot of diagonal ball yesterday, particularly long ball from David McInerney around the middle of the field, and even Tony Kelly as well. They were a lot more conscious, I think, of giving a better ball to the inside forward yesterday than they had been the week before. But that could be something to do with Dublin gave them more time on the ball maybe than Kilkenny did as well. But it's definitely far more direct. They have, when you're looking at it and you have John Conlon, Shane O'Donnell, and maybe possibly Aaron Shanner in a full forward line, get the ball into them. Try and get as decent a ball in as quick as you can. They're the sort of lads that could do an awful lot of damage.
And did Conlon start and Shanahan come on again?
Yeah, Colin started full forward. Had a good battle with Owen O'Donnell that Owen O'Donnell came out on top of. In fairness, Conlon had to move out the pitch. It was
To be
kind of
fair,
like
Conlon's form has been well. I think he looks a little bit rusty at the moment. He wasn't at his usual kind of level against Kilkenny either.
yeah, and the prospect of him coming back to form and getting into the sort of form where he's going to get 1, 2 a game per game, or 3 or 4 points per game, and then O'Donnell chipping in, and then like Shannon seems to be used as a kind of a sub coming in with 20 or 25 minutes left, and is invariably makes a massive difference every game he comes on in. Yesterday he was only on the field 30 seconds and he had a brilliant point got off with Owen O'Donnell. But just back to Owen O'Donnell and Conlon, it was kind of like two bulls going at each other again. It was like I said to you about Gerard Mack and Ernie and Stephen Bennett a couple of weeks ago. It was like that again, two big, brazen kind of players going at each other, but O'Donnell definitely got the better of it yesterday.
Like for Dublin, it's going to be 70 days now without playing another competitive fixture, and this is something that Cork have to deal with as well after getting knocked out of their group, and well, they're not in relegation bother either, so basically they've nothing left for 70 days. And the other thing for Matty is he had obviously ripped up the script a little bit by putting Chris Crummy in the half forward line against Wexford, ends up breaking his collarbone. So he already knew that there was a problem with winning the ball up the field, and then with the broken collarbone he actually lost that option for the game. So I'd say Matty feels at the moment if he had ducks they'd drown.
Yeah, and just on the Chris Crummy one as well. So he's going to be out for probably 6 to 8 weeks with his collarbone. Are you going to go with the devil and put him back into the back line and try and make the back line a bit stronger, or are you going to put him back up into the forward line where, I'm not saying he was a fish out of water, but it's a new position for him, and he's coming back from an injury, and you're coming back from an injury into a position that's not altogether that familiar to you, particularly at county level. So it'll be interesting to see what he does there. If Crummy's going to be a bit rusty, I think he'd have an awful lot more of an impact on the game in the half back line than the half forward line. So his hands are kind of tied in that regard as well.
Yeah, I think it's a tough one for him. He's playing off a very, very weak panel, and it's not going well for him at the moment. Just a quick word on David McInerney, because I saw him playing against Kilkenny at midfield. I saw him in a couple of the other games. I think he's been really impactful, and he's allowed, because he has such athleticism, he's neat enough on the ball, and because he protects the defence well, I think he's a great foil for Tony Kelly in midfield.
Yeah, to be honest with you, I would have always said, I remember watching David McInerney in Fitzgibbon semi-final and final centre back for UL, and he was one of the best players on the field. And you're just looking at him like it's great having him full back, but to me, like he just has too much hurling for full back. He just has too much. He's too good on the ball to be confined to that position where your primary job is to stop one of their best players playing. I think they have a couple of other players maybe that could slip in there, the likes of Conor Cleary, the likes of Pat O'Connor, that could fill those positions. I just think he offers them so much more at midfield. He's brilliant on the ball. For a fullback, he's too comfortable on the ball to be that close to goals, if you know what I mean. Out around the middle of the park, he can just dictate affairs out there. If he gets the ball 100 yards in, he can score. If he gets the ball anywhere out around the middle and he's anywhere under pressure, he can take it on. He has the pace and athleticism to take it on. But he also gives very, very good ball into the forward line, which was very noticeable yesterday as well. It was that kind of, he knows the ball that a fullback doesn't want coming in, and he was given that lovely diagonal ball, that angled ball out, which favoured the forward yesterday. He just offers them something different, and like 16 points from midfield between the two lads yesterday. Tony Kelly, I know it was only a point from play, but yeah, it just seemed to complement each other very well. And McInerney looks like he's enjoying himself out there, and I just think he can have more of an impact on the game there than he can in the full back line.
Do you know, I'm actually taking, people think I'm hammering Clare all the time over the years, and I even see some of the comments on the videos that we did, the preview that we did on Thursday. I actually taken this Clare team more seriously than the one in the last couple of years, because I think they're looking for a bit more of a balance. I think there's probably an element of trying to shoehorn in a couple of big physical players that probably won't get the job done when the sod hardens up in the summer. But I like what they're, in an overall sense, I kind of like what they're trying to do with this team.
Yeah, no, I was quite impressed yesterday. Now, the caveat has to be taken into account. Dublin were pretty poor now yesterday, I have to say. They were pretty poor, but Clare did what they had to do. If they hadn't had that lull before half-time, they would have won the game by 12 to 15 points. I've been impressed enough. I think he's David Fitzgerald is obviously out. That's kind of who he was looking at centre forward. David Reedy has kind of slipped in there. So you have the kind of spine of the team seems to be reasonably secure. Obviously, I'd imagine Donald Toohey will come back into goal over Culligan played yesterday, but I think he has a fair idea of the shape he wants on the team, and I suppose we didn't know. The last couple of years we've been talking about where should Tony Kelly be played. Should it be midfield? Should it be centre forward? Should it be in the full forward line? Should it be half forward? It looks like he's going to stay with him there. Like, I think McInerney and Kelly have played the 5 games midfield together. That seems to be a solid midfield partnership that they're going to go with now. They've generally looked at Conor Cleary fullback and Pat O'Connor fullback or centre back, apart from maybe playing Shane Golden there in a game and Kyle Malone centre back in another game. So he's a fair idea who he wants to play where. What I liked about the most, I mentioned earlier, they have a kind of a hard edge to them, a very how should we say, a fair kind of an edge, but a very hard edge. They get properly stuck in, and they're just kind of swarming bodies. It just looks like Brian Lohan's playing style has just been kind of transferred over to the way he wants these guys to play.
I was at the Tipperary Waterford match yesterday, so Tipperary beat Waterford 24 points to 216. Notable enough to see 3 brothers starting together, so Brian McGrath, Noel McGrath and John McGrath. Actually, John and Noel started in the full forward line alongside each other, and Niall O'Mara was in there too. But I threw it up the other day. Can you think the last time the 3 brothers started together? And there was an absolute avalanche of responses going back God knows how many years of different brothers starting. But it's still a fair achievement in this day and age. But I suppose still it's not uncommon for club teams, obviously, but county teams too, for it to be built on brothers.
Yeah, to have 3 lads playing county together, particularly now when between injuries, between lads going travelling, obviously the different ages of the lads as well, it's a lot more uncommon now. If you have a couple of sets of brothers in a squad or on a team, it makes some difference to you. Like, you know what I mean? It's just like there's like the 2 McGraths have obviously been playing probably together since about 15, 16 definitely anyway. I was kind of always waiting for when Brian would kind of make the breakthrough. He was very good in that. Obviously, he was captain of the minor team in 16, the same day they won the All-Ireland as the 2 lads, and he was involved with the under-21s then a year later. So I was kind of waiting for it to see him coming through. He's one of this kind of new brigade, but like the Dooleys, like just look at the Dooleys and Offaly. Like the Dooleys contributed 211 of Offaly's 316 in the 94 All-Ireland. Like Do you know what I mean? Like to
Their
have that.
father was walking down the street feeling like Billy Big Bollocks the next day.
Like I remember after that '94 All Ireland, they actually did a program in Kavanagh's pub in Killeen. It was called Doolini, The Great Escape, and it was basically just all about the three lads. Like maybe the McGraths will have something like that in the future as well. But it just makes some difference to have like you have 1/5 of your team basically. It's phenomenal.
And funnily enough, though, it probably didn't really work out great for the lads on today. Now, Noel McGrath was named at midfield, but Willie Connors, he was replaced before the start of the game by Paddy Cadell. Cadell went midfield, Noel McGrath went corner forward. He scored a point, did a couple of nice things. Both himself and John missed goal chances. And Brian was named cornerback, but actually played wing back, and he was withdrawn early in the second half. So I think, like, the McGraths are beautiful hurlers, and I think in the middle of the summer that's when you might see the best out of them. But Tipperary a little bit disjointed. The game horrendously disjointed, especially once you had that spate of red cards just before half time. I don't know how much of a chance you've had to look back on those red cards, but did you have any thoughts on which were and which weren't? And then also, we saw Robbie O'Flynn sent off with a straight red against Galway for what was a high tackle on Fintan Burke who went flying.
Yeah, I saw all those incidents. Yeah, the Austin Gleeson one. Personally, I didn't think he was looking at the ball, and I thought he was more looking at the man. And to me, that I nearly think that was a red card. But honest with you, not even a second yellow. But he did get a
Because
second yellow.
I didn't think the first yellow card was him. I thought it was Conor Prunty. They both wear blue helmets. The only thing is, there's a possibility he said something to the referee, because I definitely thought the foul was Conor Prunty.
The foul definitely was Conor Prunty. I looked back on it last night and I actually said it to you because I know you were there. And it was definitely Prunty that fouled him, unless there was verbals or something like that. So when he got 2 yellows, if the first yellow was for that tackle, that was mistaken identity. So he shouldn't have been sent off at all. Kevin Moran's, that's not a red card for me. And I have to say, I did think Jason Ford went down relatively easy. No more than I thought Pádraig Maher went down relatively easy against Aaron Dunphy in the All Ireland quarter final last year as well.
Are you calling out Tipperary here?
No, I'm not calling out Tipperary.
Because it sounds an awful lot like it.
I think both those boys went down relatively. Like Jason Ford went down and then he got up straight away nearly. Do you know what I mean? Like if you go down, you're down, like, and you stay down.
I actually ran into to Kevin Moran a little bit later on, because I went up to the Anner Hotel to write up my article.
He gave you a jab into your chest, no?
He did, no. But it was just so cold and simple, I had to get out of there. But yeah, I went up there and I was just saying to him, just thought you're a little bit unlucky, and he was kind of almost like he didn't even say any words, just gesticulating, and I just took from that he's like, well, you put yourself in the position where you can get yourself sent off. But like, you know, Eddie Brennan, I love that Eddie Brennan is so vocal on Twitter. I think it's just so refreshing. But I had put up, as the game happened, and this was before I saw any replays, so straight red for Kevin Moore, a little dig into Ford, but seemed very, very harsh, and I still think that now. And he replied with, the question that needs to be asked is, are we seeing lads going down easy? I'd be very disappointed to see that develop in hurling. Now the flip side to that is, now, and there was obviously a lot of people interacting with his response, is that rather than going down easy, do lads need to be flaking in the first place? Like you talk about Aaron Dunphy last year, did he need to flick back on Pádraig Maher? I know Pádraig Maher was never going to get killed by it, but do lads need to do these flicks in the first place?
Yeah, probably not. And I think lads need to be a lot more aware of the fact that, like, if you have your hurl in your hands like this and you're going at a fella, there's a fair chance you're going to get sent off. So like, going in hitting a lad's shoulders or something like that, and shoulder charging at each other or something like that, is totally different. It's, you know, it's hands down, shall we say, and you're not going to get sent off. Once you do something like that, you are giving yourself a chance to be sent off. But just on that as well, like the Cottle Barrs incident, I can't see a red in that. I really cannot. Like, what exactly are they trying to say that he did? I can't see. I don't think it's a yellow. I don't know what it is, to be honest with you. I'd imagine that'll be appealed and he'll get off.
Yeah, well,
I can't see that.
Sheedy was saying afterwards that Cahill was very much adamant that he didn't do anything. Watching back the replay, I don't think he did a whole pile. At the time, I heard the familiar sound of Hurley smacking off helmet and Cahill going like that. I don't know. Is it something to do with reputation? Is it kind of middle of a game? And said to the guy beside me in the press box beforehand, this game is going to get evened up yet, and that's not because of Sean Stack necessarily, but just it feels like that kind of stuff happens, that a team goes down to 13 men. The ref's going to find it hard to leave it that way for the rest of the game.
Yeah, it looked like Barrett made a little go at him, almost like he did. It was like a little reaction, but there was nothing to it to me. Yeah, I don't know how many times that happens in a game when a team is reduced a player or two. If there's, I don't know if it's a default in a referee if they just start thinking it's 15 on 13. If they in their subconscious they're thinking, oh, if there's a chance to even it up, maybe we'll take that opportunity. That's not right either, because all emotion and everything should be taken out of it.
I want to compliment one of the players who played really well for Waterford, and anytime I've seen him in the last couple of years, he seems to have done so. Mikey Kearney just ran at Tipperary time after time. I think he's a very good player, and he probably first got his chance maybe, that injury ravaged 2018 summer, Derek McGrath's final season. He's a really good player, and his pace, the way that troubled Tipperary, was very typical of what we saw. I'm just looking at the match programme here. Very typical of what hurt Tipperary during this game. Peter Hogan running at Tipperary, that did damage. Desi Hutchinson, and he didn't get into the game as much as he'd want. His running troubled Tipperary. Stephen Bennett even, he ran down the centre a couple of times. Jamie Barron grew into the game, and there was flashes there that the form of 2017 can come back for him. All in all, if I'm Waterford, and just talking to anyone from Waterford and a few players that you kind of briefly interact with, they seem really, really happy with what's going on with Liam Cahill. So if I'm from there, I'm thinking there's a decent season ahead.
They're full of energy, aren't they? They're full of energy.
So that was a fair bit of feedback on Waterford there. Appreciate that.
Well, I thought you might comment on it because you were actually at the game.
No, there. They have Shane McNulty, very good at cornerback, and I think he won pretty much every 50-50 on Jason Ford once that matchup happened. It didn't happen from the very start. The flip side, like you're saying, great energy in the team. The flip side is for Tipperary, Liam Sheedy said afterwards that they're in the middle of a heavy training block, and normally managers don't. I suppose it's easier to say something like that when you win. If they had to lose, he probably wouldn't have been able to say it at all. But, Paddy Maher looked very, very sluggish. And if they are doing heavy training, it's probably more likely a player who's over 30 at this stage, and 31 probably, that they're going to find it tough enough going. But, geez, you'd struggle to name more than 2 or 3 Tipperary lads who played particularly well. Like Dylan Quirk, surprise, a young lad. And this is a guy who missed about a year of the game. He collapsed with a heart issue just probably more than a year ago now at this stage. But he was really impressive. 4 points from play. Thought he'd a fifth one at the start of the game, but it was later waved off. Set up a couple of chances as well. So for Tipperary, that's 2 wins in a row, but you can't say they've blown us away in this league.
No, and they didn't blow us away in last year's league either as well. So I think Liam Sheedy be happy enough. As I said, we kind of said before, the way the fixtures worked out and the game being called off worked out perfect for them. So they're going into the rescheduled round 5 with a chance of getting into a quarter final. Whereas if they played Galway in the third game and been beaten, they would have been out and would have had 2 dead rubbers basically for the last 2 games. So I think they're in a great position. I'm not surprised they were kind of leggy this time last year as well. Carbro Carolon, who does their strength and condition, I'm sure everything is focused towards May and June, and hopefully for them, I'd say further afield again. They looked leggy last year against Kilkenny, and in some of the other league games as well. But when it mattered, they looked a completely different proposition in summer. And I think a lot of that as well is you're preparing, you're training bodies in tough conditions now, and you want them to be in shape for completely different conditions as well. Do you know what I mean? So they're poles apart, and as you said, I'm not surprised some of the older fellas maybe are struggling a small bit or treading water a bit in those kind of conditions, because it just does, you just don't recover as quickly, and it's easier for the young lads who are 19, between 19 and maybe 24, just to bounce out, and they'll train tough on Friday night or on Thursday night, and they'll still be flying on Sunday, where it's far more difficult for the older lads to do that.
Just a quick run over some of the other results. Limerick 124, Westmeath 18 points. So obviously that's Limerick top of their group and straight into a semi-final. Big news there is that Shane Dowling, he's very much struggling with injury, and it's hard to know if we'll see much of him this summer, because he had a knee issue, and John Kiley said yesterday that progress hasn't been great. It's been slow, and to be honest, it's probably not looking great. Like it would be a fair one to have taken out of your panel.
Yeah, it would indeed. Yeah, like if he's saying that now, the first weekend in March, and they're playing in 10 weeks' time, like it's not like you're coming back into a club scene where realistically, if you get 3 or 4 weeks of training under your belt, you can add an awful lot, be it off the bench or as a starting club player. At county level, I would say he'd have to be back training in the next month to play any part. Genuinely, I would say to play nearly any part between now and probably July, just because you need that body of work under your belt. Like, don't get me wrong, I'd say he's rehabbing, I'd say he's doing as much as possible to keep himself in great condition. But if you're not actively out on the pitch for 2 to 3 months, you haven't a hope at intercounty level. Realistically, it'd be a fair loss. Yeah, the impact he's made off the bench in the last couple of years has been outstanding. Even he was the one that nearly helped and turned the screw against Kilkenny last year with that amazing overhead goal as well. You also have a free taker coming in. If Galan is off form, or if Galan gets injured or anything like that, you have a ready-made free taker who's probably going to score. He's going to be up around your 95% like you need as well. So he'll be a big loss. And me and kind of Shane from the kind of media circuit as well, and he's a very good talker as well, and I'd imagine he's a very good talker in the dressing room. And while he'd still be in the dressing room, I don't know if you can relate to this, it's not the same talking or having an input when you can't physically have an input, if you know what I mean.
Absolutely,
it might be okay on a one-off basis, but as an inspiration, so to speak. But if you can talk to lads in training and the drills, and if you can talk to lads when they're there and they know that you're going to come on, you just can have a different impact on lads, I think, as well.
You feel like your wings have been clipped a little bit if you're either injured or if you're gone down the pecking order in terms of the sub. Whereas once you might have spoken openly in the dressing room and get fired up because you feel reassured by your own position in the setup, yeah, it can definitely compromise your ability or your willingness to speak.
Yeah, without a doubt, yeah. So, yeah, he's probably going to be under pressure by the looks of things. When Kiley is saying that he's going to be under pressure, that means he is under pressure.
So Laois decided to forfeit home advantage to go and play in Kilkenny with 322 to the Cats, 119 to the O'Moore County. The fact that the footballers Laois played at home against Kildare, and I know Eddie was obviously giving out about the pitch when they played Carlow a week beforehand. Do you think for Eddie part of it was, let's get a game at Nolan Park because that's a good test of a player's bottle and we're going to have to play there in the summer?
Yeah, it's funny because the footballers were supposed to play Saturday evening, and that game was postponed until Sunday. So even if they had tried to keep O'Moore Park for the Sunday, there's no way a double header would have went ahead. So I think they had a fair idea maybe what was going to happen. From Eddie's point of view, I'd say they were safe. They're out of relegation trouble in 1B, Group 1B, and I think he was like, okay, this is a good little trial run before Championship. A trial run for the lads, and even a trial run for him, for what they expect come Championship time. As I was saying to you last day, like, Eddie is the first former Kilkenny player, having trained under Cody and played under Cody, to go back and face Cody directly on the sideline. PJ Ryan would have done it with Wexford in 2017 when he was goalkeeping coach with Davy, but this is the first. He's probably, I don't know if he's the first of many. It'll depend on how depend on how long Brian Cody stays around, I'd say. But just interesting on that as well. I did a piece for the Independent there Saturday. You're going through that great Kilkenny team, particularly of the noughties, and the amount of lads that are involved in coaching and management now. And it's phenomenal. You look at Brian Cody, he has DJ Carey, Martin Comerford and James McGarry, three trusted servants on the pitch with him on the sideline. Look at the Kilkenny under-20s, you have Derek Ling as manager, Peter Barry and Michael Rice as selectors. You look at David Herity as Kildare manager, Michael Fenley as Offaly manager, with Michael Kavanagh his coach / selector. Richie Power is the new manager of Carrick Shock. Brian Dowling, who played 2 championship games under Cody, is the Camogie manager. Philly Larkin, another Kilkenny legend, is his selector. Andy Comerford is a selector with O'Loughlin Gales, and it goes on and on and on and on. PJ Ryan, who was involved at Wexford, is a GDA in Leinster and Kilkenny, and making sure that Kilkenny hurling progresses for as long as time can go on. So it's amazing. And to be honest with you, from my own point of view, I compare that to Offaly, would say Offaly's 94, 98 teams, All Ireland winning teams, and I see very few, if any, lads involved with teams.
That was a fair love letter to Kilkenny, I have to say.
What's that?
That was a fair love letter to Kilkenny there.
Can you get some sort of romantic music maybe playing in the background?
You forgot about David Herity with Kildare.
Well, I thought I mentioned him.
Yeah, maybe you did actually. Anyway, so Wexford beat Carlow and beat them convincingly, 229 to 111. That's a fair outpaced, and it kind of continues what's been a tough enough league for Carlow so far. And obviously they're going to have that clash against Westmeath in the relegation playoff. But to be minus 70 in score difference after 5 games, it's going to be hard for Colin Bonner to pick the boys up.
I actually forgot to mention PJ Delaney, who's coach with Colin Bonner as well. There's another one. You take the Laois game out of it. The Laois game is the only game where they're competitive. It's a game where they could have got something out of it, beaten a point, and didn't. They didn't get anything out of it. Like everything goes down to this game against Westmeath, but they're not coming into it probably in the best frame of mind. Like that's a fair few trimmings. And I know I was past the Congress at the weekend for the 6-team Leinster Championship. I just hope we don't get to the stage where there's 2 dead rubbers in most rounds.
Yeah, but because there's a volume of games, and I often say this about the Premier League in England, any league in the world really. Like there's 10 games going on a weekend in the Premier League. You're always going to have 1 or 2 pastons. Generally you do. So as long as, let's say, there's 3 games going on in the weekend in the Leinster Championship because you've 6 teams, and then you have a couple more going on in the Munster Championship, you're going to have 5 games a weekend. And if there's 1 or maybe even 2 pastons the odd weekend, probably in the grand scheme of things, it's not all that much of a concern because you have enough of good stuff to talk about. And on the days when a weaker team does have a good performance, or you could talk about it a little bit more. And of course, the more they're exposed to this level, you would hope that rather than giving up the ghost and teams committing less and less and less, that they'll respond and they'll improve their level over time.
Yeah, it is all about development, really, isn't it? Because with the tiers in hurling, while they're very competitive within that tier. I always get the fear that those tiers are getting further and further adrift of the tier that's ahead of them. Because when you're solely playing against teams of that level, you become that level. Do you know what I mean?
Whereas, is that your concern with Offaly even?
Yeah, to be honest with you, it is. Yeah, it is. Yeah, like if we don't get out of Division 2A this year, which is kind of probably 50-50 at the moment, probably less than 50-50 at the moment, then you're playing at 2A again. So that's another year of league hurling at that level. I think every year you're there, it gets harder and harder to get out of it. I think if you get out of it straight away, you're back up at that level and you're like, okay, we need to raise things a couple of steps. We're going to be playing Kilkenny, Wexford and whoever next year. We're going to have to up this. Whereas you're playing at 2A, I just think it's harder to raise the standards. No more than if Offaly didn't get out of the Christie Ring this year, then you become to that level. That's the level you're playing at, and that's the level you will tend to stay at. So that will be my worry there. And just back to the 16 Leinster Championship, I actually am. I know I said at the start there worrying about some maybe one-sided games, but I would totally be in favour of that because. Carlow performed well last year. I'd imagine Laois will perform even a bit better than Carlow did last year. So you give an opportunity for teams there, and there's only one team being relegated. So that would be an interesting. The relegation, the 5 and 6 game, would be very, very interesting as well.
I do want to quickly talk about Galway Cork, but just a mention of Division 2A because Antrim beat Kerry. Kerry, of course, had at least 3 players missing with the mumps, including Shane Conway. There's a bit of an outbreak of mumps down in the Cork College, as I've heard from a few people. It now means that Kerry, they've done pretty well in their games so far. They've 8 points from 5 games, so 4 wins. That if Offaly beat an Antrim team who have nothing to play for now because their game was refixed. And this is the issue with, instead of postponing every round of games or playing the postponed games before the last round, you now have it coming down to the last round whereby, Kerry they might be the odd ones out here by virtue of Antrim not needing a result here and playing a weakened team against Offaly who could get through to the final on the basis of beating that.
Actually, it's a horrible scenario for Fintan O'Connor and Kerry to find themselves in. Not only were they missing, Shane Conway and a couple of more lads. Shane Conway, obviously, their talisman. He had this well flagged up when those games were called off a couple of weeks ago, and I think he sensed that maybe that this scenario could happen. And now it's totally out of their hands. They lose one match, and they lose one match. To me, they're the best team in the league. They're the best team in Division 2A, and if they'd had a full complement yesterday, I would have fancied them to get a result against Antrim. Now it's totally out of their hands, and a match that should have been huge in round 3, Offaly and Antrim, could descend. Not to say it could descend into a farce, but it easily could. Like, Antrim are through to the final. Will they put out their best 15 against Offaly? There's not a hope of it. Not a chance, will they? They have a final the week after or 2 weeks after, and that's really the only game that matters to them now. So, listen, from my own point of view, it looks like Offaly could be the ones to benefit, but it's a totally unfair scenario for Kerry to find themselves in, and I don't know. Like, they're just going to have to try and prevent against things like this happening in the future with postponed games, because it's just not on, really.
Yeah, but for Darren Gleeson to get into that 2A final at the first time of asking and to win 6 points by 6 points away in Kerry isn't bad going. Just a final point then on Cork against Galway. Cork were in a good position in this game. Red card to Robbie O'Flynn, allow Galway to turn it around. We know now that Cork aren't going to play for probably the guts of 70 days now. So it finished 218 to 116 to Galway. So Shane O'Neill has a winner takes all clash next week. And I think it's important too that they did it without Joe Canning. And if they can beat Tipperary next week, and again they won't have Joe Canning, that'll be a fairly good sign going into the summer, especially when you really get the sense that the league isn't his priority.
Yeah, the league definitely isn't his priority. He said as much, to be honest with you. That was a fair result for them yesterday. Like, I was down watching them in Waterford the week before. And, Conor Cooney was very quiet. Niall Burke was quiet. Jason Flynn came on, didn't really have much of an impact. Jason Flynn had a big impact yesterday. Conor Cooney looked full of confidence yesterday. He had a great catch to set up one of their goals, and then he basically tried a beautiful ball over the top for Brian Kincannon's goal as well. And Brian Kincannon, you love to see a player doing something like what he did. He easily could have just taken a point off his stronger left side and just got back out in position, but he took it on, and I think that's massive for them, particularly in Joe's absence. But even when Joe is there, they need to have other lads taking it on, and I think that was kind of promising enough yesterday. From a Cork point of view, though, like the same kind of problems are arising again, particularly defensively. I think they raised it last night on the League Sunday programme. Jackie Tyrrell was talking about, like, just some kind of kamikaze defending. A ball comes in, a 10% ball, I'd say, for Conor Whelan, with 3 defenders around him, and they foul him. Do you know what I mean? Straight through his back. Real kind of silly things. And I don't know, like, Cork are going to have to. Cork have shown us very little throughout the league, apart from the Tipperary game when Tip were missing a lot of players. So now they're away with themselves for 10 weeks, and they're going to have to show something completely different for Championship. And I always feel there's a pressure with that. Whereas if you've delivered throughout the league and you have a couple of good performances to look back on, you're always better going into the Championship in that sense. You have something in the bank, be it confidence or whatever. Now that they're going to have to rip up the league script completely and show something completely different in Championship, and that would be the worry for them. I don't know. Like, even Patrick Horgan yesterday, I'd say if Patrick Horgan has scored 3 to 4 scores from playing this year's league, I'd be surprised. Like,
actually, as it happens, Owen Cormacan, I was reading his stats in the Examiner, and he said that Horgan has scored 47% of Cork's scores in the league so far, but only 2 of them from play. So yeah, you're fairly much on the money.
Like, that's unbelievable. Like, for one of the best players in the game, but for them to be relying on, as you say, 47%, probably 40%, just over 40% are from place balls. So, like, if a team only gives away 4 or 5 scoreable frees against Cork, which can happen and has happened in Championship hurling, it looks like they could struggle, despite the fact that there's this unbelievable forward line. So, like, I don't know. They've an awful lot of question marks hanging over them. I thought we might see something this spring from them, something a little different that we haven't seen in any of the previous probably 10 years, I'd say, in league action. We've seen very little from Cork. A couple of sporadic performances, and now they're going into the championship, with even more question marks hanging over them, I'd say.
Like, without Shane Kingston, I don't know what they'd be doing in the league, but like, if they can put it all together, and actually, if my aunt had balls, we're saying it so often. I'd like to make a point about the Robbie O'Flynn sending off. I can see 100% why Fergal Horgan would send him off, because you obviously have the hurley up too high and it catches the player. But I do think that there's this thing whereby, like, Fintan Burke was always going to go flying a little bit, but that players seem to put up their hand and sort of allow themselves to get vaulted by the hurley a little bit by making sure they hold on to it to some degree. So you're making sure that the referee sees there was a foul. But I do think the net effect is that it exaggerates it and makes it look a bit more dangerous than it is. And I'm not really slating Fintan Burke by saying that, but I feel a little bit sorry for Robbie O'Flynn, even though by the letter of the law he does have to go.
Yeah, I've made comparisons with Fintan Burke and Paddy Matter before, and one of the reasons is when he has the ball that the arms go up, and the more than we talked about Shane O'Donnell earlier, he tends to invite a free or try to bite a free, so to speak. So once he puts his hand up, the opposition player and the tackling player has to be so careful, because as you say, if the arms get locked or anything like that, there's only one place the player in possession is going, and that's to the ground, and it doesn't look good because they're going to be kind of thrown into the air. That's kind of what happened yesterday. I don't agree with you in that instance. I think it was a badly mistimed tackle. I think it maybe it looked worse than it was, but it looked pretty terrible, to be honest with you. I think it looked really bad, and I don't think the referee was left with much of an option.
No, I don't blame Fergal Horgan, and I did watch it back 3 times before fully coming to this conclusion. I suspected that the way he vaulted himself through the air was a little bit kind of defied physics a little bit, that's not the way your body would fly if you'd been tackled like that. But look, I'm not criticising Fergal Horgan with that. A couple of points then. I thought Tim O'Mahony's goal is absolutely fantastic, and that is the sort of the positive. Those are the attributes that he has, that he can burst on the shoulder, solo through, and he's a great striker of the ball.
But did you see the way he threw up the ball for the goal? He threw it. He thought he was going to get hooked. He actually threw it in front of himself and fell into the shot. So there was no way he was going to get hooked, which I thought was unbelievably smart.
Yeah, I'd love to see what the ceiling of his kind of his potential is, because I could see him doing brilliant things for Cork, but at the same time, his form is so erratic. It's hard to know what you're going to get.
Yeah, I'd like to see if he was let play off the cuff a bit more. In maybe a position like that, maybe midfield or half forward or something. But
isn't that the problem with Cork, though? That too many of them are playing off the cuff, and then you see them like defenders 40 yards apart, and they're getting cut open.
Well, that's true, but I prefer if he can play off the cuff a bit more as a half forward, we'll say, and is a tall. I don't know if I saw him at Fitzgibbon level. He's not a bad ball winner, and they need plenty of them as well. I would personally be looking at him further up the field because he has that type of ability. But there's so many players with Cork that, oh God, I don't know. Like, you're just not sure where they're going to be playing. You're just not sure what the structure of their team is. They're after the league now. Like, do they have a centre back? Do they know their midfield pairing? Do they know who's going to be playing centre forward? I don't know. There's an awful lot of questions.
And that's the one thing you think Kieran Kingston on his second goal with a lot of the same players that have ironed out by now.
You'd imagine when he's looking in, you're thinking, oh, I'd love to do this, and this. This is who I play, where. And it doesn't look like, whether they haven't performed in those areas that he thought they would, it doesn't look like there's any difference between Cork this time last year and right now. They're still the same. They're still like totally in flux, and we don't know what's going to happen in Championship.
Yeah, actually, Micheál Donoghue was on League Sunday, and he goes, "This group won't panic." So he was just talking about Galway not having a great start to the league, and I think it was like they'd won their opening game against Westmeath. It had been losses ever since. One kind of little word of warning: the way Shane Kingston went around Grode McInerney, who was playing full back early on in the game, I think that's kind of like a snippet of the issue that he could have at full back. But other than that, I think Galway have to be very happy to win, as I said, without Joe Canning, and have a winner takes all clash rather than having to wait 70 days like Galway have, or sorry, like Cork have. So I think overall, no matter what happens from here, Shane O'Neill will be happy enough with how the league went.
No, I think you will, and it just means that their fifth game is going to be unbelievably competitive, a quarter-final place at stake for both teams, and if they win, I think it'd be a bonus. I don't think he'd be unduly disappointed if they get beaten as well, because he's going to learn an awful lot more about a lot of these fights. And a lot of them, it was funny yesterday, even see TJ Brennan near the end bursting forward with a ball. There seemed to be a bit of a confidence about them yesterday, whatever it was. Maybe they're just kind of coming into themselves as the league kind of progresses. But yeah, so I was kind of. I maybe worried for them after the Limerick game, less worried after the Waterford game, and even less worried after yesterday. They seem to be kind of coming to themselves, and the newer players kind of seem to be emerging, particularly in the absence of Joe Canning, which is a big positive for them.
Yeah, and Davy Burke came back, so that's a positive. I'm still not sure about Cathal Mannion midfield. I'm not sold on it at all. I think in midfield, like, he's a brilliant man to take possession and punish teams, but midfield, I don't think that you can do that alone. I think as a Roman centre forward, as a wing forward, corner forward, you can kind of do that to some degree, but I'm not sure out midfield that he'll offer enough going in the other direction to justify the brilliance he'll have going forward.
I know what you mean. Yeah, it depends who's with him and the type of role the other midfielder is playing. If the other midfielder is playing the Davy Burke role from recent years, where he's very defensive and was picking up a lot of balls in his own 45, I think you'll get away with it and you'll be able to allow him to play make from midfield. If the other midfielder is trying to do something similar to he's doing, then you have a bit of a problem. It has to be kind of yin and yang, kind of, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's it. We've enough said for this week. We'll talk again soon.
Anyone.